What if I told you that one of the most popular, most enduring characters in the entire Sonic the Hedgehog franchise was never supposed to exist past his first game? In the early 2000s, video game mascots were all about Toad, but this was different. He wasn't just a darker colored clone, he was the perfect rival. A dark mirror to Sonic with a mysterious past, immense power, and a genuinely tragic story. He debuted, played his part flawlessly, and made the ultimate sacrifice in a blaze of glory. His arc was perfect. It was complete, but he was too cool to die. Fan letters flooded Sega. The demand was overwhelming. And in Sega's frantic and frankly misguided attempt to capitalize on that popularity, they brought him back. And back again, and in doing so, they systematically dismantled everything that made him great in the first place, turning a complex anti-hero into a walking, talking, gun-toting identity crisis. This is the long, complicated, and tragic story of how Sega ruined Shadow the Hedgehog. To understand the fall, you have to truly appreciate the peak. And that peak was, without a doubt, 2001's Sonic Adventure 2. When Shadow the Hedgehog first appeared, he was an absolute shock to the system. His design was immediately iconic. The stark black and red against Sonic's friendly blue, the intimidating angular eyes, the inhibitor rings on his wrists and ankles, hinting at a restrained power, and those rocket shoes, which gave him a slick, almost alien way of moving. He was everything Sonic wasn't: serious, ruthless, and brooding. He framed Sonic for his own crimes, effortlessly commanded an incredible power called chaos control, and had a conviction that made him a genuine threat. This wasn't just another evil robot or a goofy monster of the week. He believed he was an instrument of justice. Shadow's journey in SA2 is one of unraveling these manipulated memories. He starts as a villain, convinced he's fulfilling Maria's wish for vengeance. But by the end, he remembers her true, selfless desire, not for revenge, but for him to protect humanity, to give them a chance to find happiness. He teams up with his rival to save the world, and in a final heroic act, he unleashes his full power, becomes Super Shadow, and sacrifices himself to stop the colony's collision course with Earth. He falls, seemingly gone forever. It's a self-contained, powerful, and emotionally resonant story. A perfect one-game arc. Takashi Iizuka, the head of Sonic Team, has confirmed multiple times this was the original plan. Shadow was supposed to be a one-and-done character, but Sega had a hit on their hands, and they weren't about to let a little thing like a perfect, definitive ending get in the way of a new cash cow. The problem was, his story was already over, so where could they possibly go from there? So, how do you bring back a dead character whose entire narrative arc has been resolved? You reach for the oldest, cheapest trick in the writing handbook: Amnesia. In 2003's Sonic Heroes, Shadow is discovered by Rouge the Bat, alive and well inside one of Eggman's stasis pods. The catch? He has no memory of who he is, his past, or his sacrifice. His entire powerful journey from SA2? Wiped clean. He's now just a brooding blank slate, tagging along with Rouge and a newly introduced robot, E123 Omega, to find answers. This immediately cheapens his sacrifice. It's no longer a definitive heroic end, but a temporary inconvenience. His profound, grief-driven motivation is gone, replaced by a generic quest for identity. He's reduced from the story's driving force to its central mystery. This confusion was doubled down on in the handheld title Sonic Battle. The game heavily leans into the possibility that this Shadow is just one of many Android copies, further muddying the waters. He spends the entire game wrestling with the idea that he might not even be the original. While it's an interesting concept, it shows Sega was already fumbling. They had resurrected the body but had no idea where the soul of the character went. This was the first major sign that Sega didn't know what to do with him, but they knew they had to do something. But these were just cracks in the foundation. In 2005, the whole building was about to come crashing down. All right, let's talk about it. The 2005 solo game, Shadow the Hedgehog. This game is the epicenter of the character's destruction. You have to understand the context of the mid-2000s. Dark and edgy was king. The gaming world was dominated by mature titles. Sega, in what appears to be a monumental misreading of their audience, looked at Shadow and thought, fans like him because he's edgy. Let's crank the edge up to 11 and see what happens. Sega's solution? Give him a gun and a motorcycle and make him swear. But the game's most unforgivable sin was its core mechanic. The branching morality system. In each level, you could choose to help a hero character like Sonic, a dark character like the new alien villain Black Doom, or pursue your own neutral path. This resulted in over 300 different story path combinations, leading to 10 wildly different endings. In one ending, Shadow decides he's the most powerful being and kills Eggman to take over his empire. In another, he concludes he was created to destroy humanity and embraces it. In another, he becomes a full-fledged hero. For a character whose central conflict was, who am I? The game's answer was a resounding, I don't know. Who do you want him to be today? It turned him from a character with a defined, tragic motivation into a hollow vessel for the player's whims. And the final true story unlocked after all that, it's a cataclysmic retcon. It turns out he wasn't just created by Professor Gerald. He was co-created using the blood of an evil, hive-mind alien leader named Black Doom, who now wants to use Shadow to enslave humanity and turn them into alien cattle. This completely demolishes the beautiful human-centric story of Sonic Adventure 2. It's no longer a tragic tale about science, loss, love, and humanity's capacity for both good and evil. Now it's a convoluted, generic sci-fi plot about being part alien. It's an unnecessary, clumsy answer to a question that was already perfectly answered. They took a Shakespearean tragedy and turned it into a B-movie monster flick. After the disaster of his solo game, Shadow was left in a bizarre character limbo, and SEGA had thrown so many personalities at him that none of them stuck. So what did he become for the next decade? Just the grumpy one.
Disgusting black creatures. Get out of my sight.
In Sonic 06, his story is ironically one of the more coherent parts of that infamous game. He's portrayed as a competent, mission-focused agent for Gun, which is a logical step. But he lacks gravitas, and his story is overshadowed by the game's catastrophic failures. But the ultimate indignity, the moment that truly crystallized his fall from grace, was Sonic Forces in 2017. This writing choice is an absolute masterclass in how to fail a character. It tries to preserve Shadow's heroic status by saying he was never really evil. But in doing so, it makes him look weak and irrelevant. It implies a mere copy of Shadow is nothing more than a mid-game boss. It also raises the question, where was the real, all-powerful Shadow while Eggman took over the world for 6 months? The game never explains, making him seem totally ineffective. He's gone from Sonic's equal to a B-tier hero who gets sidelined in his own rivalries and whose clones are used as disposable henchmen. So, what happened? SEGA caught lightning in a bottle. They created a perfect, tragic anti-hero with a beginning, a middle, and a definitive end. But his immense popularity forced a resurrection they weren't prepared for. Without his original purpose, they didn't know what his new purpose was. Is the character ruined forever? I don't think so. Recent portrayals have shown glimpses of the old Shadow. The IDW comics in particular have done a fantastic job of blending his Adventure 2 nobility with the trauma and arrogance he developed later. He is stubborn, proud, and difficult, but his actions are rooted in a consistent worldview that ultimate threats require ultimate force. And now, we have the ultimate wildcard. Shadow the Hedgehog is a cautionary tale of what happens when a company chases trends and doesn't understand the heart of its own creation. They saw the dark fur and the red streaks, but for a long time, they missed the broken heart that made him so compelling in the first place. But what do you guys think? Is Shadow a ruined character, or is his messy, contradictory history just part of his charm now? Let me know in the comments below, and thanks for watching.